Welcome to Rock Solid Families podcast. You thought I was going to say Strong Dads, didn't you? What would make you think that?
Maybe it's because you had the sign up wrong.
Guys, we did already a 5-minute recording with the wrong
That's
background
okay.
in.
We're
But
starting
we
fresh.
are moving.
You didn't even have to
back.
say that. They would have never
No,
known.
I don't care. I can own it.
There you go.
Andy and I just did a little video about owning our
Owning
stuff,
it?
and so I own it. I dropped the ball.
Well, happy Memorial Day. We're dropping this
man, that's
podcast
right.
on Memorial Day,
Whew.
and I did not wear red. If it would have gone well with your blue.
I like to tell you that I planned this blue, but it just happened.
It's your
Most of
favorite
my
color.
closet is blue,
Yeah,
so
I like it.
worked.
I like it.
Yeah.
You look good in blue.
Well, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. You
What
look
do we
good in what would you call that?
Rust?
Rust?
I don't know. What are we talking about today anyway? Colors?
Well, we do want to say a thank you for Memorial Day, and we want to thank you for all of the shoulders that we stand on, guys, and we mean that figuratively and literally. The people that have created what we have that we take for granted. I mean, just so much in this country, from our economy, the businesses, the educations systems and churches,
yeah,
like all of these
communities.
things came from people who came before us. And so that is something we want to give a memorial to. But in doing that, Hannah, specifically, we're gonna look at the memory of our grandparents.
Yeah, but before we do, we definitely want to thank all of those who served in our military and gave the ultimate sacrifice
Absolutely.
for our freedom, right? For the shoulders that we have stood on to have the freedoms that we have. So we definitely honor and recognize those folks and those families who lost family members. We are a military family ourselves, and so we understand the sacrifices, but definitely have not lost anybody because of that. And so we're grateful for those who have sacrificed their lives for this.
Yeah, but in particular, today, we do want to focus on the grandparents, the role of the grandparents in our lives. And the reason, Hun, that we kind of focus down on this is because you and I in our line of work have really seen the grandparent role get very, I'll just say, weird compared
Shifted.
to what we used to see.
Yeah.
Right? It's gotten very different. It has shifted, if we can say that. And maybe not always good. I mean, I'm sure there's some good in some of that, but there's some things that have happened that has just not been very healthy for the grandparents, the parents, the kids. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and maybe how we can reclaim at least an understanding, at least being more intentional about how we handle the different generations.
Yeah.
Tell me,
What
memories do you have of your grandparents?
Oh my goodness.
You were very involved with your
I
grandparents.
was. Well, my maternal,
Willis.
Willis and Sylvia, my maternal grandparents passed away when my mom was 16, so I never knew them. I did get to meet her foster parents, but they weren't really close and in our lives for very long. But my paternal grandparents, wow, you met them. They were characters, and they lived right down the street. And honestly, everybody on my dad's side of the family lived within a walk or bike ride to each other. And if you moved out of the subdivision, wow, you really moved away.
Yeah.
And so I have a ton of memories. And I even as a teenager and young adult, when I was driving, I would drive down, and my grandpa and I would sit on his screened-in porch. He'd be listening to the Reds game on the radio, and we'd be playing gin.
Yeah.
And it could be a hot summer night, and the ceiling fans are blowing, and we are just sitting there having a great time.
And he'd have a cigarette in his mouth.
He would.
And
He couldn't be able to see
smoke
through.
would be going up through his eye. And
You could have left that part out.
It was so funny because he was ornery. He was a
Yeah.
really good guy, but he was just ornery.
Yeah.
And he always took to me, in terms
loved
of he enjoyed.
Merle.
Come in here. And he'd always talk smack. He talked smack before it was cool to talk smack.
Yeah.
So he was really a lot of fun to be around.
How about yours, grandparents?
A very different experience compared to yours. Not really a negative experience, but
different.
our parents, my mom's side, not very connected. We did see them on some holidays and things like that, but there was just more dissension in that family. It was a huge family. But I think, I don't know, to be honest, the men never stepped up well, and the women got very catty. And so there was just a lot of backbiting all the time in that family. And so
On your mom's side.
on my mom's side, and and seeing that now, I was like, wow, why didn't grandpa or why didn't some of the uncles step in and go, no, that's not how we're going to operate here. So, but my dad's side, I don't have memories like you. Like I can't ever recall a time where I was just with me and my grandparents.
Yeah.
Like never did they just babysit us or anything. There were 37 of us.
Yeah, I mean, there was 5 of us for a while, and then there was up to 12. But yeah, that's different than 30 something.
Yeah, yeah. So there were a bunch. But here's what I do remember. Family was very important. And so we always had huge gatherings at my grandparents. And I mean, every holiday, right? Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving.
Didn't they have just like a
4th of
2-bedroom
July.
house?
It was a little
How in the world
bitty
did they do that?
2-bedroom house. It did have a basement, 37 kids, all the aunts and uncles. Food, beer, and cigarette smoke everywhere. I mean, can you just imagine?
What a memory.
Yeah. And it was great.
Yeah, you guys were in the basement.
We loved it
honoring.
because all my cousins were relatively close in age, you know, and so we still get together.
Yes,
Right?
we had just a cousin
We
reunion
had
not
that
too
kind of
long ago.
reunion, and we share those kinds of stories.
Yeah.
So I guess the big takeaway that I got from my grandparents is that family is important, and you protect the family. And I also think, you know, in real time, I probably could have gotten upset over some of the things that happened between my grandma and grandpa because it wasn't a perfect marriage, but they held that marriage together. And I think one of the greatest legacies that I see in the entire Hutchinson family, not a perfect family, but the rate of divorce in the Hutchinson family is
very low.
Very, very,
Yeah.
very low. It's very low. And that we've held marriages together. And I think that comes from my grandparents. They said, no, you're committed. So
yeah, for
it's
sure.
a big deal for us.
So before we get into that a little bit more and how that role is shifted, we first want to thank our sponsors. We want to thank Maxwell Construction and Casey's Outdoor Solutions and the Hoosier Ice House for their support of the Rock Solid Family Podcast and the ministry of Rock Solid. And so if you don't know who we are, if this is your first introduction to us, we would love for you to go on our website, rocksolidfamilies.org, and check us out. There is 7 years worth of podcasts and resources, blogs that we have put out there. And so I'm confident that you can search on our search bar and find what you're looking for.
We've covered just about every topic.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And we also have a class coming up, hon. We just finished one in May, but tell us about the June one.
So our Families Rock, what we kind of refer to as our Families Rock intensive class, because it's all in one day, is coming up on June 28th. It's the last Saturday of the month. And so that goes from 8:30 till noon. That's at the Tate Street, the firehouse, Lawrenceburg Firehouse on Tate Street down in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. And so, guys, that's just turned out to be a really great class for us. You know, you could have a small number of 3 or 4 people, or we could have 12, 13, 14 people. But no matter what, we all get together. And I'd say in some ways it's almost a modified counseling session.
Small group, yeah.
It's because it's small group.
Yeah.
And a lot of back and forth can take place if people desire to do that. But it covers all of our Families Rock stuff. And so, yeah, that's coming up.
It's a best bang for your buck because you get really 3 coaching sessions in one class.
Right.
And it's less the cost of one session.
Right.
So it's $75 for 3.5 hours. So it's definitely worth your while. If you are really divided as a couple in your parenting strategies, or maybe you're a blended family, or maybe you're a divorced couple and you're really trying to find some common ground, this is your class. And so we've gotten great reviews. People sometimes are court ordered to come.
Right.
They're not really happy to be there, but when they leave, they feel like that was a valuable worth of their time.
Typically, our court order ones are because it's a separation or divorce or break, and we're trying to get the parents to come together to figure out how to co-parent.
Yeah.
But this is a class for anybody, parent, right? Because coming together, unity in parenting is really the first place to start. If we can get unity, we can get so many more things accomplished within raising our kids. So
speaking of unity, you know, the role of the grandparent has kind of changed and morphed and sometimes created division and dissension because we kind of have redefined the role of the grandparent. And so we want to kind of talk about that today and what we're kind of seeing walking in our doors. You know, hon, we do have quite a few grandparents raising grandchildren.
Yeah.
And we even have a couple of great grandparents raising grandchildren. I can't imagine how tired I would be.
Yeah.
And so we kind of see this getting kind of mixed up.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you can look back, and I don't want to say exactly that it was always this way and it was kind of a perfect sort of thing, but if you could go back maybe 20 to 30 years, you could see a clear distinction between generation and generational roles. You had grandparents who produced the parents, who produced the children. And it's, the children would go and hang out with grandma and grandpa for a few hours,
have some fun, and
be
probably
spoiled.
eat things they weren't allowed to eat at home.
And then mom and dad would step in and go, okay, let's get back to our regular way. So there was a very distinct sort of thing, but life kind of happens, whether all of a sudden both grandma or both mom and dad have to work. There's a divorce situation. The family breaks down a bit, and you have to get resourceful. And so we know that. We're not trying to say you're doing this stuff on purpose to hurt your family. We're saying, man, people try to get resourceful.
Yeah.
And in doing that, we start to change up the roles. And so a big thing that we see is kind of, as you talked about before, the grandparents are coming in and, if not raising, at least playing a significant role in the daily lives of the children.
Yeah, and so they're the disciplinarian because they're with the child all day because mom and dad both work. Maybe parents have addiction issues and they're not responsible and able to care for the child. So the grandparent has to come in and set up the boundaries and the rules. And I will just tell you, we're grandparents. I'm tired. I don't think I could do the day in, day out discipline and do it well. I could do it, but it's not my desire.
I could.
It's not my desire. And it's really crazy how you get kind of worn down and you kind of get kind of loosey-goosey with your roles or your follow through. And so it's just not the way God intended it to be. That's why he closed the womb of a woman in her 40s. So she's not having children in her 50s and 60s. When we adopted our 3 youngest, we were in our 50s.
Right.
And thankfully they were 11, 10, and 7, but we still were behind the 8 ball when it came to their peers and those parents.
Yeah.
They had 10 years. We had 10 years on them. And so we definitely felt kind of sitting in those stands, right? And in those recitals and
do this again.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, it's tiring.
Some of you might be thinking like, well, it's not quite true because a lot of cultures grow up and keep the entire family together generation to generation to generation. But I think the big difference that you have with that is you have them all together, but the roles are still separate. What we're talking about is maybe the parent is now pretty much out of the picture and the grandparent has to jump into a parenting role. So we're not, it's actually a little bit easier when everybody's together. Like you were very connected to your grandparents, but you still knew who mom and dad were because they were always right there in the
Although
picture.
I will say, grandma had this pantry, and when mom wasn't around and dad wasn't around, I knew I was allowed to go in that pantry and get candy, Tic Tacs, and gum.
But when mom was around, get out of the pantry.
I had to ask permission. I
Yeah.
had to ask my mom, and my grandma would say, "You have to ask your mom."
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Oh gosh," because I know the answer is going to be no. You
Yeah.
know, and we also have, and this is why we have stepped in a lot of times with parents. They've lacked confidence and really
parent
tools.
themselves,
The parents themselves. They don't feel confident in their role, and they're literally kind of turning it over to mom and dad. Some of them are living with mom and dad, and they're letting mom and dad do the disciplining, and they're kind of running out, having their social life and their fun times, and kind of the parents, the grandparents, I should say, are not following through with, no, you're the parent.
Yeah.
We're not going to do it for you.
It's not bad or unusual for a new young parent to consult their parents, in this case the grandparents, to say, gosh, I don't know how to do this with this new baby. But when you just kind of throw your hands in the air because of the weight of the responsibility and you start to withdraw, so the responsibility still has to be covered, that's kind of when we're talking about things are getting confused.
Yeah.
So
And kids go to the weakest link, by the way.
The weakest emotional link.
Yeah, yeah. So if they know that mom and dad would say no, and then I'll go to grandma and grandpa, or if grandma's babysitting all day, then grandma will buy me all these things. And so we just have to really recognize that wasn't really the design for grandparenting.
Yeah.
But sometimes financially, I mean, I don't even want to understand how much parents are paying for childcare these days. Yeah. It's crazy. Sometimes you have to do the math and like, is it really worth it?
Our daughter right now, she's babysitting.
Oh, it's crazy.
And I was doing the math the other day, and I'm thinking, there's just no way. You'd be better off to stay home and do some at-home job.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get to some advice.
Well, I want to say something to the point of, we talked about it before at the very beginning, about our Family's Rock class. And we said the number one thing that you can do just to get the ball started right is to have unity between the parents. The problem that you have when we mix these roles up, it's hard enough to get two
Mom
people
and dad.
to be unified. If I have a mom, a dad, and a grandma and a grandpa and all these people, and they're all going to try to get unified on how they're going to parent this child, it gets really difficult. And so just the unity is compounded. The challenge there is compounded. So for that reason, we really want to try to clean this up and understand who's in what role and how to protect the role.
And that's if there's just two sets of grandparents. A lot of times there's step grandparents, and sometimes they can have 3 or 4 grandma and grandpas.
Yeah.
And so you've got all these people weighing in, and all these people have opinions. And so one of the things we say in our parenting class is firm, fair, and consistent. If your parenting and your discipline is firm, fair, and consistent, then you have a greater chance of success. The child feels safe. But if you got one rules in grandma's house when she babysits during the day, and then you got another set of rules at dad's house because you're divorced, and then mom's got one set of rules over here and she doesn't even really follow through with them, and then you got a step grandparent over here, it gets crazy. And a lot of times, not really meaning to, they just have different messages.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into trying to clarify and clean out some of the mud here, okay? First things first, I do think it's really important, guys. We emphasize it is important. It takes the village, and in this case, it does take the entire family, and to actually celebrate, stay connected to all of this family. Emphasize the importance of grandma and grandpa and visiting them and staying in contact with them, all right? Emphasize the importance of mom and dad, the importance of the child. Like, celebrate, in this case, all 3 generations. And that especially, that's easy when the kids are little ones and everybody wants to celebrate their first birthday parties. But as people get older, the teenager doesn't want to go to grandma and grandpa's to celebrate their birthday anymore. But the idea of just trying to keep the kids realizing, hey, that generation that you no longer thinks is cool, you're standing on their shoulders. So we want to maintain a level of respect.
But as grandparents, us, we have to respect the boundaries that the parents put in place. You speak about holidays and birthdays, and so my grandmother had stacks of presents. Okay, and so our kids have made it clear, like, we don't want a stack of presents for our child on their birthday, and so we've had to respect that. And I want to honor that. I didn't know until they said something, right? But I'm thankful that they did, because I want to honor their kind of boundaries, right? And so parents, you've got to step in and say, respectfully, lovingly, okay, we love you and we thank you for being generous and loving our kids, but could you limit it to one gift? Right? Or one toy, or whatever that is.
The second part here is, it's okay to clearly establish what the role of that person or that particular generation is going to be. My mom did an excellent job of that, and we used to kind of make fun of her. Because my mom said, I'm grandma. I am not going to be watching your children. Not that she would never, ever babysit, but she told us right up front, I've already carried that. It is your turn to do that. So she established...
I'm not raising your children.
Yeah, she established, I'm now moving into another role. And so we don't want to ask people to go outside of the role that they are in, I'll say, developmentally or chronologically. Like, You don't ask a child to be an adult, even though we oftentimes put or allow children to go into adult roles. All right. We don't allow, and we don't want the grandparent to be stuck in a parenting role. So we identify, no, this is the role of the child, this is the role of the parent, and this is the role of the grandparent.
Yeah, my parents occasionally babysat, but it was an overnight for our anniversary. Right. Or a special wedding out of town. It wasn't like every weekend or all day during the week. It was a special occasion.
Yeah.
And that made it special. And I mean, we're going to have our grandchildren next week. I am so excited. We're going camping.
Oh, we're
They're going to stay with us for a couple of days, and then we're going to meet mom and dad, and we're going to have so much fun, and we're going to make memories, right? But we don't do that every week, and they're not asking us to babysit while they're working. And that's where we really kind of blur the lines and kind of create some problems.
Yeah. The second or the third part here, guys, we've talked already about honoring the different generations and that. But the next part, I want to go back to the Christian faith. And the Christian faith starts with the idea that you are understanding the importance of submission. You might know all about Jesus. You might know all about the Bible. You might know all about these things from an intellectual level. But until you know it from a submission level to the authority that those people are, that God is, you're going to be stuck. You're going to be your own God. And so within the family arrangement, we really want to use these different tiers, grandparents, parents, and children. This is a great place for us to practice the importance of establishing the submission to authority.
Yeah, honoring.
Yeah, because this is how we honor the people before
and respect,
us. And so if you're, gosh, hon, we've talked about before, like, I would say, I don't know, gosh, sometime back in the 80s or 90s, like manners seemed to go out the window.
Yeah.
And I don't have to say please and thank you. And I can just call you by your first name.
I don't even have to call you grandpa or Mr. something. You know?
And what we're trying to do is like, no, you keep that hierarchy of authority and you teach your kids why they submit to it. So if grandma and grandpa ask you to do something, you do it, again, everything appropriately here.
No abuse.
Yeah, and so they learn that, no, that's grandma and grandpa. They have authority over me. Because ultimately, the Christian faith is asking you to submit to one way, and that is the way of Christ.
Honor your parents, honor your mother and father. And so, we do talk about this all the time, just about, when we disagree with somebody. We've had this on other shows. The new generational trend is you're dead to me. I'm cutting you out of my life. And we've talked about this before. And parents are doing this to grandparents. Like, I don't agree with you. You gave our kids too many presents, or you didn't rock them to bed right, whatever. You didn't put them in the car seat right. And so you are no longer allowed to have any connection with our children.
Yeah.
And I'm just telling you, that comes back to bite you in the butt. Because you're going to train and teach your children that when you disagree with somebody, you cut them out of their life.
Right.
And so they're going to do that when they get older, because that's what you've modeled. So I'm not saying that every grandparent's great and every grandparent needs to have that deep connection with you, because maybe they are unhealthy, right? Maybe they are abusive. But please, 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 as much as it's in your control, do not cut people out of your life, because you're just setting your children up for them to learn that that's what you do when you disagree with somebody.
And I'm completely on board with you. The only exception that I would really see to that is when we use, I don't want to use the word abusive here, because abuse is kind of a no-brainer. You cut them out. But we also know that if there's interfering, like let's say you say, we talk about boundaries all the time. And if you say, hey, in our home, we're trying to raise our kids, and these are the boundaries that we have, or the rules that we're going to have on our kids, and the grandparents keep intentionally ignoring them, or even just trouncing right over top of them, going through the Matthew 18 principles of actually confronting it and discussing it and trying to get resolution. But if they just refuse, like, well, I'm sorry, I'm the grandparent, I'm going to do what I want, then you're not dead to me, grandma, grandpa, but I do have to put a boundary on you. And so I want to just make that point, that we do want to separate that point.
I actually had, though, a mom whose grandpa, her dad, would come to the house, and he would forget to take his shoes off. and she didn't like any shoes in the house. Okay. And so because of that, she cut him out completely from the grandchildren's life. I think that's a little extreme. You may say, hey, if you don't respect our boundaries, and obviously I would walk in the door and forget too, but I don't think it's an intentional, malicious kind of ignoring boundaries. But if she's kind of a germaphobe, and if she's uncomfortable with him in the house, then maybe that's why you meet at a park, or you go over to his house, or you meet at a restaurant. Find a way to keep the grandparents in the child's life.
Yeah.
If for instance, you mentioned my grandpa smoking, and when he would come to our house, he knew that we don't smoke in our house.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But if my grandpa would have come and kept smoking in our house, I would have said, Grandpa, I love you, but you're not coming to my house anymore.
Yeah.
We'll come to yours and we'll sit outside on the deck, but we're not going to keep coming to your house. You're not coming if that's what you're going to do.
That's where all the generations are trying to work for the good of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Let's just do what we need to do to keep the family. That's that self-righteous arrogance that when one generation says, well, I don't really care, I'm going to do what I want. That's no different than if an 8-year-old is running the house, right?
Yeah.
So
And you also have to take into consideration, my grandfather was 85 years old.
Right.
He had been smoking since he was 12.
In
the
house.
In the house, in the car. And so to ask him to completely change his dynamic was unfair. But I needed to be reasonable for what I wanted and also what he grew up with, and respect that. And I was asking him to respect us.
Yeah, because we gained so much more out of him besides get the focus off the cigarettes and go, he was fun, he was hardworking, he was loving, he was, the words he left with us were the things that stick with us. And it's like, I don't want to lose that part of him.
He has some great run-liners. So, by the way, this is not just Merle and Linda speaking this. God has very clearly showed us in his word to honor our parents. Exodus 20:12 says, honor your mother and father so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. And this command lays that groundwork for respecting those who raised you, and by extension, who raised your parents. And so we want to continue to do that.
Yeah. I think another point here is the idea, sometimes we don't always get along with our own mom and dad, and so now they're in the grandparent role. We have to still respect them in front of our kids.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because our kids are watching our lead on this one. And if we talk bad about our own parents and those kind of things, that's exactly what your kids are going to pick up.
Yeah.
And so this would be no different than if I have a divorce situation. We emphasize the importance of don't talk bad about your ex in front of those kids, because they're just picking up the flavor of that, and they're going to carry that in to the relationship. So always work with respecting each other so that your kids get that message that that's important.
Yeah. And, the Bible also talks about the blessings of that multi-generational family, right? Where we can have this integration of parents and grandparents and children. And Proverbs 17:6 says, children's children are a crown to the aged, and parents are the pride of their children. And so it really highlights the joy and the honor that grandchildren bring. Like, we have 6, almost 7 grandchildren. We got one coming later on this month, but what a blessing they have been. And they live too far away. It's really, really hard, but we just really make the most of the time we get. And we just feel so blessed. And we were just texting back and forth with our oldest 3, and they're traveling with their other set of grandparents, and they're in the back seat, and they're just, we're cutting up back and forth. They're sending pictures and faces.
They're already talking about what breakfast cereal they're going to get to eat with grandma and grandpa.
Because we're camping next week. It's just so fun. And so they are. It's just such a joy.
Yeah. Guys, here's the bottom line. We are all about family here, and family is easily extending beyond your 4 walls of your house. The people that built into your life, hopefully they did it in a positive way, but now this is your opportunity to be conscious and intentional about how you're going to continue that in your kids' life. And so it is important that you do put all 3 of those generations in, and you try to establish, like, you can't control what other people are going to do, but if you can at least, establish the importance of those grandparents and try to get them on board to be involved in a positive way, and then you as a parent, and of course those kids, and just the respect for all those generations.
Oh, yeah. And as we celebrate Memorial Day, try to memorialize your parents, those grandparents, as much as you can. I'll never forget our daughter-in-law had asked all of us for a wedding picture. And she put all of those wedding pictures, including her grandparents, her maternal grandparents, her paternal grandparents, her parents, our parent, us. And so those grandchildren got to see generation after generation. And obviously some of those were black and white old photos, but it was such a beautiful thing. We have children who have, children who have named their children after their parents or grandparents. And it's just so beautiful because they can tell the story about Grandpa Hayes or Grandma Ruth or, Grandpa Michael. It's like such an amazing gift to memorialize them. So please try your best to capture those moments, whether it be videos, pictures, names, sakes, just things that really could help your children remember those generations of blessings.
All right. So guys, as we get ready to close things up, we just ask you to keep that family strong, keep them healthy. If there's anything that we can do to help, whether it's parenting classes or whether it's to help with the marriage or whether we have a certain dynamic with an individual that's not healthy, please reach out to us. You can call us at 812-576-7625. Check out our webpage at rocksolidfamilies.org. All kinds of different things going on there, from our blogs to newsletters and just all kinds of all links to the things that we're doing. So check those out.
Yeah. So thank you so much for listening to the Rock Solid Families podcast, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day.
To thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. Casey's has grown to be one of the largest and most unique garden centers and gift shops in the Cincinnati tri-state area. Whether you are looking to take on that next landscape project or simply add a little home decor to your house, Casey's has you covered. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Call them today at 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home. Rock Solid Families wants to thank Maxwell Construction for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. For over 30 years, Maxwell Construction has been a leader in turning dreams into realities, building schools, banks, restaurants, and many other commercial and public facilities. Maxwell Construction has made it their priority to not just build buildings, but to build into their community. So if you have any construction needs, call them at 812-537-2200.
Rock Solid Families would like to thank Hoosier Ice House for being a proud sponsor of the Rock Solid Families podcast. In the heart of historic Lawrenceburg, Indiana, the Ice House is at the corner of Vine and High Streets. The historic building evokes a feeling of comfort with spacious indoor and outdoor dining, a large bar, and comfortable dining areas. Large enough to host parties, yet intimate enough to feel like your favorite neighborhood restaurant. So thank you again for the Hoosier Ice House for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast.